안녕하세요. 저는 서울대학교 교육학과 박사과정 중인 스텔라라고 합니다. 오늘은 제가 발표할 제목은 What does it mean to educate the whole person according to Dewey입니다. 제가 영어로 페이퍼를 쓰기 때문에 영어로 발표하겠습니다. So first, let me show you the index of my paper. And let me start with the introductions of this paper. There has been debates on the goals of education, but one thing that has changed, although we haven't found an agreed answer to the goals of education, is that in the past, the priority used to be given to acquire knowledge and skills, but in the recent years, there has been renewed attention given to human development. So right now, a lot of people are asking more fundamental questions such as these, and more countries are also exploring broader non-cognitive educational goals. And there has been widespread desire for education that fosters comprehensive development, as shown by the papers below, especially in the first essay, Educating for Comprehensive Well-Being. There has been various contemporary approaches to philosophies and practices encompassed under the umbrella term education for well-being. And there are about 11 terms here. And Dr. Kwak also tried to interpret the previous essay in her own work, Education for the Whole Person in a Modern East Asian Context, caring about the world as a form of self-love. And these are the two reasons, the two arguments that she made to argue why the this educating for the whole being, educating for well-being is an educationally uh, worth pursuing. And I myself would like to join this conversation by including Dewey's ideas of education in this conversation. And I have three reasons for this. You can read it on the screen. First, second, and also third reason. And so let me first start by addressing how can whole person education possibly become the solution for modern education. Because before going on to Dewey's conceptions of whole person education, I would like to discover whether this general idea of whole person education is still valid for today's education in the modern society. I believe that this concept can tackle four problems. The first problem is that I believe whole person education can counterbalance the narrow focus of traditional education system that only prioritize academic performance and standardized testing. I believe that this can also potentially solve the various mental health issues in the students, such as stress, anxiety, and depression, because they're mainly caused by competition for academic achievement. I believe when we address non-cognitive aspects throughout the whole person education process, the students will be reminded that their value as individuals um, are not equal to just their test scores or academic achievement. And the third problem that whole person education can tackle and potentially solve is a fragmented way of teaching subjects at school that will lead to students disconnected and disengaged learning experience. Um, while we cannot expect schools to discard all the fragmented subjects in our current school system and start from scratch, approaching education from a whole person perspective would enable us to ask all teachers to stretch their subjects to make the educational experience meaningful and purposeful, and this would meet the students' needs relating to their life and aspirations. And the fourth one, um, I believe that with our current focus on knowledge transmission and standardized testing, it's impossible to develop students with a strong sense of social responsibility, empathy, and ethical reasoning. And so, only through whole person education, we can emphasize the development of individuals as active citizens who understand their rights, responsibilities, and the importance of civic engagement, and thus equipping students with the skills needed to contribute positively to democratic values and participation. So now let's take a look of what does it mean to educate to educate the whole person according to Dewey. Well, we can take the hint of this from Dewey's view regarding the child's nature. So Dewey in his work, The Child and the Curriculum, believe that education should be centered on the children's life, But he also emphasized that the individual's mind as a function of social life is not capable of operating or developing by itself, but as requiring continual stimulus from social agencies and finding its nutrition in social supplies. And so this fact shows that to Dewey, um, um, education is a complex intellectual operations that the student can only do with the help of educators who provide directions also. And this also implies that social dimensions of growth also matters to him. And second, we can take a look at that according to Dewey, um, it's important to understand the child not only from the knowledge and intellectual perspective, but also from the emotions and endeavor perspective. So in his work, he identifies four major impulses, communicative impulses, constructive, investigative, and artistic. And he believes, we can see here that Dewey is trying to build an argument of how the student is a feeling, purposive, intellectual being who needs to be approached as a whole person. And third, we can take a look that Dewey is really directing his education in this direction when we take a look at his careful considerations of the constructions of the student's educational environment and also educational processes. So Dewey argues that school should be reorganized and systemized to create an ideal educational environment that is more vital, more prolonged, and containing more of a culture. Then what are the conditions for building an educative environment that fulfills all four impulses of the children? So we would refer to the child and curriculum again in this part, according to Dewey. First, I'm just going to go over through this part. According to Dewey, in order to satisfy the constructive impulse in the child, schools should incorporate occupations or manual or industrial works. So he criticized that the traditional school, like the seatings arrangement, for example, and the size of the classrooms are made for listening and not for working. And so he suggested that schools should incorporate more of like labs, workshops, basically just it should be an educative environment that can appeal to students' tendency to want to make, do, create, or produce. And also, Dewey described that a language should be learned and taught, like his descriptions of how this should be taught and learned shows that he tried to modify the traditional purpose of language learning, and he is into teaching language for the sake of free play of the children's communicative instinct. Because to Dewey, he believed language is primarily a social thing, a means by which we give our experience to others and get theirs again in return. So he argues that educators should center their language teaching on the children's desire to communicate vital impressions and convictions and their freedom. Now, this does not mean that Dewey doesn't believe that the school's purpose is also to foster the intellectual development in the child. But Dewey, he really genuinely believes that when these occupations are incorporated and the schools are done right, when children are allowed to learn more from doing real activities and not just learning fixed lessons for the sake of disciplines, we will give our children the opportunity for the introduction to various subject matters which illuminate them, and also the opportunity to infuse materials with meaning. And only when a school environment is set up in this way that children will experience comprehensive and meaningful learning. And so eventually, Dewey holds that the school should include all occupations and manual work because it supports the role of education to enable our children who are living in a world in which everyone has a calling and occupation, something to do, something to see that their daily work carry immense and human significance. And I really do think that this emphasis on the importance of helping children realize their worth and helping them find their motivations to live an active life shows Dewey's genuine interest in the students' broader and long term flourishing. The fourth one, we can take a look. We can see that we can see at um, we can closely examine that Dewey he is criticizing the lack of fundamental unity between outside life and the school, and this leads to the waste of human life. So this is what it means. This is what the waste of human life means. Was over here. Then what's the solution to this? To Dewey, the only way to unite the parts of his system is to unite each life. So he argues that school's affair or role is to clarify and liberalize this connection, to bring it to consciousness, not by introducing special studies, but keeping alive the ordinary bonds of relations. So he argues that there are plenty of real connections between the experience of children and business conditions, which needs to be utilized and illuminated. And to do this, uh, do you encourage us to accomplish these two? First, we need to create a vital connection between the lower parts of the schooling system with the higher ones. For example, he supports the free interactions between all parts of the school system, creating breakthroughs and dynamic interactions between K-12 education and universities, for example. And second, he encouraged us to focus on how the school is organized. So organizing the school is gym, dining room, kitchen, library, music studio in such a way that the child can carry over what he learns in the home and utilize it in the school, and also the things he learned in school he can apply at home. So basically, these are D's purpose, and this shows that D's genuine belief that his version of the whole person education or education for well-being should not only focus on the individual's autonomy, but also envision a collective goal. So this far, I've introduced you the idea that education for the whole person is supposed to be the kind of education directed to go beyond the traditional goal of education and to include the individual flourishing beyond subject matter knowledge and vocational skills. Moreover, these conceptions of whole person education can also help enrich the discussions of what the whole person education could look like. However, I am aware that my next step is supposed to touch upon the pedagogical implications of the notions of whole person education, especially concerning how his conception can help solve our current education problems. I haven't done that in my paper, but I will keep this in mind for my further discussions in my future papers. Here are my references, and I am thankful that you've taken the time to listen to this presentation of mine. So thank you for listening. 경청해 주셔서 감사합니다.